I thought I'd have this car on the road today, but turns out when I was pulling it off the trailer, hey, the brakes aren't right. Pedal goes almost to the floor. Well, you jack it up and look at it, open the master cylinder, turns out that the rear brake cylinder is totally dry. Okay, well, we're gonna bleed them. But then the other question is, why is it dry? I mean, it's been sitting for 2 years. Turns out there's a leak in the master cylinder and the brake fluid in the rear reservoir was leaking down and out there, down the engine and down the side, and yeah, guess making a puddle on the floor. So I started to bleed them a little bit to see how bad the leak was, see if I needed to replace the master cylinder. And I discovered I hate bleeding brakes. How many times in all of these cars, every time you rebuild them, every time you fix the brakes, you got to bleed them again, and you talk your wife into coming out here and pumping the pedal and all that kind of stuff. I bought one of those cheap vacuum pumps, you know, squirt, squirt. So as you create a vacuum, right, at the bleeder, it not only pulls fluid out of the cylinder, the slave cylinder, but it also pulls air in around the edge of the bleeder, which is now loose, right? And so you're getting bubbles coming in there constantly. You can never tell if you've got pure brake fluid in the cylinder or if you've still got bubbles in there. So I ordered a new master cylinder, 61 bucks on Amazon. It's going to be here in a couple days. In the meantime, I am going to build a brake bleeder machine. Yeah, well, we built a tank. Here's a piece of pipe. That is, what is it, 3.5 inches, something like that. I'm sure I'll get more than a liter in this, so I'll make it 9 inches long. Seems to be the right measurement. If I draw plans, the tank will be 9 inches long. All right, and we'll put caps on the ends. We'll put air pressure in the top. So I'll use the air pressure in the shop to push the brake fluid out of this tank and into the master cylinder. And then I can just open up the bleeder valves and let the air and the brake fluid out. And then an air inlet at the top, a filler plug at the top. I tried to find something really nice, but I can't. All I can find is these old black cast iron water pipe things. Off the top of this tank, we're going to have air coming in. I will run it with the hose for spray painting because there's a regulator on there that will choke it down real good and not let too much pressure through. Otherwise, you're going to have air brakes in your 29 Dodge. On the bottom, we're going to have the other sight tube and then the valve so that we can shut that off, and when we take the thing apart or take the thing off the master cylinder, there's not brake fluid running all over the place. The trick always when you're bleeding the brakes is to not run out of fluid in the cylinder. So I'm going to design this so that it will keep fluid in the cylinder with this tank filled with brake fluid, and we'll have this line on here for sight to see the level of the brake fluid in the tank so we don't ever run it dry. Sprayed it with a little paint. I like using this bed liner for pickup trucks, easy liner. Just makes it really hard, and it dries quickly, or quickly enough, in a few hours. All right, so we're going to hook the hoses up onto this thing. Permatex thread sealant. Can get really messy, but it also won't let anything leak. If you just pick up a little bit from the brush, not too much, because it kind of goes everywhere. Actually crawls up your hands, you know. Okay, we will suck these up. This will be our little sight tube. We're going to have to heat it up to get it on those fittings because the tube is a size smaller than the fittings. There's nothing worse than doing a big long job of bleeding your brakes and then you pump some air into there. You start all over again. So we'll be able to keep a real good eye on it. There's a lot you can do with a heat gun. Good thing to have on hand for stuff like this. Saves using a flame on it. Heat it up a bit slowly, the hose, so you don't catch it on fire. totally ready. Okay, we don't want the pressure to blow one of these hoses off or something like that. It'll be actually quite devastating because it would spray brake fluid all over the car, all over the shop, all over the mechanic. And you can clean up the shop, you can clean up the guy, but the brake fluid on the paint, hey, pretty destructive. There we go. Sight line. We'll be able to tell exactly how high the fluid is in this tank, so that we can fill it before it pumps air into the master cylinder and you got to start all over again. Okay, I need more parts. Yeah, and then tee it to both front and back reservoirs on the master cylinder. And then the plate that goes on the master cylinder and then in the reservoir, I'll put these little barb nipples hanging down into the reservoir from this flat plate of steel, rubber gasket around here. And I'll leave them down in maybe like a ½ inch or something. So there's going to be a little air cushion on the top of the brake fluid in the reservoir as we do this process. And the reason for that is mostly to save the mess when we're all done and we got to pull this thing off the master cylinder. We don't want it chock full of brake fluid and brake fluid running all over the place. All right, found the glue. I think if it's still alive, it's lost its contact with reality. I think it's too thick to thin. Well, that's too bad. Okay, well, we'll leave that until we get a chance to pick up a bit of glue. Better way to make a circle. Okay, we'll glue that on. Then all right. The great thing about this is it doesn't even look like a baby still. And if it doesn't work, this video will never see the light of day. But if it does work, now I know how to build a brake bleeder, one-man brake bleeder for about 50 bucks that runs on compressed air. Well, we just got to wait for the master cylinder to come, land on the porch sometime tomorrow. Put it on the car. Well, bench bleed it first. You got to do that. Get the air out of it first by bench bleeding. If you need to know how to do that, there's lots of YouTube videos. It's a real simple process and absolutely worth doing. It'll just save you a lot of time. Well, it seems like we got it. We're not getting any more air bubbles out of there. So, time to put this thing on the car without spilling any brake fluid. And we are looking good. Pretty straightforward. small glitch. I had to pull the brake booster off because the plunger was 1 1/3 inches too long. The old master cylinder has a hole right down in the bore of that piston, and that this thing fit down into. But now it won't go in there. So made a smaller plunger, shorter plunger. By the way, these little brake boosters, you know, it's tiny so that it fits neatly on the firewall. And I do actually have a little bit more room, could have gone a bit bigger. But it's really cute and it works really good. And then we'll hook up this contraption and see if one man, all by himself, alone in the shop, can bleed these brakes successfully. Okay, and here we go with this thing. Kind of a fancy clamp as part of the machine, but we're just going to clamp it with a C-clamp for now. We'll tie it up here and give it a little bit of stability. All right, so there's my level right up to there. I think that's probably a good place to start. And I'm not sure yet how much pressure I'm going to run this at. What I'm going to do is just leave it on fairly low pressure and then see how fast it comes out of the slave cylinders when I open the bleeder. Oh! Well, without much effort, we've got a hard pedal. Improvements, I think maybe a better way to hook it up and a better way to clamp on top of the reservoir. And there is a pinhole in that one fitting there where I welded them. So I need to go around that a little bit, fix that up. Probably a better gasket too. This part of it works perfectly. This part here is just a bit leaky. But anyway, if I had that fixed, I think it would maintain the air pocket in there, which if I could maintain that, I wouldn't have a problem taking this off. It would mean 0 leaks though. But I think that could be achieved. Not really a big deal because first try, everything worked really good. And so what I like about it is you power that up, and I ended up using 25 pounds of pressure, PSI, in here, which isn't much, but it's enough to force the brake fluid through. And then all you got to do is open the bleeders and it runs out, catch it in a bottle. No pumping required, no second person, so so that's a win. I will adjust that, fix that up, and make it like it's a pro tool. And then I am ready to bleed brakes for the rest of my life without ever having to get anybody to pump again. It's going to be awesome. So I figured that helped, you know, and if it helps you, good on you. It was simple, maybe 50 bucks worth of parts because of the stuff I had to buy. But normally you've almost got enough stuff laying around your shop, you know, that you could do it for next to nothing. And yeah, so subscribe to my channel, would you? Because I'm going to start building this car next, cherry red, back on my 49 Fleetline Chev 06 Cadillac CTS merge car. Excited about getting to work on it again this year. I've put 3 years into it already. And well, I say that, but it's only like 4 months out of the year that I get to work on it. Yeah, so I'm ready to go. So join me with that. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to learn some new stuff.